Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Vet07, and today we're going to be talking about the best stones for the meta weapons, or just basically in general, so let's get straight into the video. So here's a general rule you should use for PvE and PvP. So for PvE, you want to use Bloodthirsty, which is very versatile, Tempest, very versatile. Those stones you could basically use on anything. And then in terms of poison, it has a very certain amount of swords that could be really, really good on. So just ask down below and I can answer your questions, but I will go over the best stones for poison. And in terms of PvP, essentially you want to use Spark on absolutely everything. It's the best PvP stone and you can't go wrong with it on anything. Glacier is a really, really good versatile stone, and also Tempest stone is really universal style. So basically, I'm going to tell you guys what the best stone is for PvE first, because this sword is a PvE sword, and I'm just going to go over a few of the PvE swords that are really, really meta right now, and then I'm going to go over the PvP swords a little bit later into the video and what best stone, what stone to use on them. So first one, we have Euro V2. Now, Euro V2 has pretty much the highest DPS in the game for bigger hitboxes, so anything that spawns in the sea, Nightblade is going to be really, really good for, except for maybe Crab or Dragon. Now, Nightblade is really, 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 really good with Poison. Now, let me tell you why that is. Poison essentially hits a percentage of damage. So if you hit 10,000 damage, Poison will do, 5,000 damage ticks 5 times. That's just an example. It doesn't really do 5k a tick, but it does a lot of damage. And since Nightblade's last move, the one that does, 80,000 damage, hits for, 5 times, the chances of you proccing Poison are pretty dang good. Also, the first ability is quite strong and hits, I believe, 7 times, so you can hit Poison on the first ability as well. This is just an all-around good sword for Poison. Now, Poison is somewhat on the more expensive side and harder to get, so if you just want to buy a stone really quick, you can go ahead and buy Bloodthirsty. Bloodthirsty is also another really good stone for Euro V2, although I don't really recommend it too much, but it is very, very good, because my strategy is to use light, fly in, use my dimension slash, get out. So I'm not really taking damage, but I was using this as just to test something really quick. Also, another really good stone is Tempest on this sword. Tempest is pretty cheap, so you should be able to get a Tempest pretty easily. It works the same as Poison. It's just a weaker Poison, but Tempest is really, really, really good. So another good one that could be really, really good on your V2 is actually Charm. I think Charm has some potential. I don't really think it's meta. If you have Charm laying around and you don't really want any of the other stones, I guess Charm you could throw in your Nightblade, but I don't necessarily recommend it. The first two are just way better. So next up we have Acro Spear. Now, Acro Spear is the only sword that I think you shouldn't use Poison on, because it does too many of those little hits and it could proc Poison and basically do really, really low damage ticks. So essentially, I just want you to put Bloodthirsty on this sword. It's as simple as that. Just Bloodthirsty, maybe Tempest, but Bloodthirsty is definitely the best stone for Acro Spear, without a doubt. There's no other stone that comes close. Bloodthirsty all the way. So Phoenix Blade V2 is also another really, really good sword. The thing with Phoenix Blade V2 is that it's kind of somewhat hard to live in raids now. Now that I took my Bloodthirsty off the sword, I am struggling a little bit more to stay alive, and I'm switching to Acro Spear more often. I'm healing more often. Like, I'm trying to get those swords to heal. I'm not really living as well, but I do a lot of extra damage with Poison Stone. So Poison is really, really good for the stone or the sword, because True Divine Mode does a bunch of hits for like 5k damage, and if my Poison procs off one of those 5k hits, it's going to be really, really, really good. So yeah, Phoenix Blade is definitely really, really good with Poison. Now, Bloodthirsty is your second best bet. Bloodthirsty just makes it where you basically can't die in those raids. Or it's really easy to heal off Phoenix Blade because it does so many hits, and it also does good damage. It's definitely one of the highest DPS swords, if not the highest DPS sword currently. So definitely get Phoenix Blade V2. It is a absolute beast right now. Also, if you don't want any of those stones as well, you could put Charm on your Phoenix Blade. I don't recommend it because the first two stones I just talked about are a lot better, but you could. So Coro V2 is a really good PvE and PvP sword. So if you use OP, of course, it's really, really good. So Coro V2 unlocks M1s when you use Broom, which is really good for PvE. It has really good DPS. Essentially, you want to use maybe Poison. If you want to try to proc the Poison off of your M1s first and then go for Echo Strike, recommend not using Echo Strike until you pop the Poison, and then you can use your Echo Strike. But the M1 should be able to proc it pretty easily, and you also have Biohazard Bolt to proc it. If you don't want to use Coro V2 for Poison, you can go ahead and use Temp. Temp Stone is also really, really good on this sword. Just an overall really good pick is Temp. So if you have any questions about a random sword It's probably going to be temp or bloodthirsty. Poison is more, it just really depends on what sword. If the sword does a lot of multi-hit, don't put poison on it. Temp is probably better because Tempest can proc multiple times in a row, unlike poison. So essentially you want to try to proc poison off of a high damage tick. So if the sword does like a few high damage ticks, then it's really good for poison. So just keep that in mind. Also, Coro V2 for PvP is Glacier. We'll get into that in a second. That's why I have Glacier on mine. But yeah, essentially Tempest, maybe Poison, and Bloodthirsty are all really good. Okay, so the next swords I want to talk about are PvP swords. Now, Coro V2 is a PvP sword and a PvE sword, but I'm using it for PvP currently because I have the Glacier Stone on it. So if you use Room and use Echo Strikes with this stone, essentially, if once the stone procs, which is really easy because this sword is like 17 hits, they'll fall straight to the floor and they can't jump. Basically making it where OP becomes really, really good. Because before Glacier and Spark were on this sword, they could just do whatever they want. They can just run. You can hit them with Echo Strikes, hit them with Biohazard Bolt, and then you could basically run. There's no other combo with OP unless you use Gamma, which is unawakened. But there's no real combo. But with Glacier, the potential is there because it knocks them all the way down to the floor. So Echo Strikes does stun, so they fall a little bit down to the floor. And then on top of Glacier, they can go all the way down to the floor, actually be running on the floor and can't run for a little bit. Now, of course, they can use their Electro Dash out. But if they use that and you catch them with Glacier, you could basically land a full combo, making this sword pretty dang good with Spark and Glacier. Now, I do think that Spark is a little bit better than Glacier, but Glacier also works, and it's cheaper. Other than that, I do recommend Tempest, and I believe that's about every stone you should probably use on Coro V2. So next up, we have Blood Moon Twins. Now, Blood Moon Twins is definitely one of the meta PvP swords right now. It has really, really good damage, good with every single, fruit. Spark Stone is essentially the best PvP stone. And essentially what it does is it stuns, so they can't really dash or jump. And it also does damage ticks, which means that it has a chance to cancel abilities, which is what Blaze was really good for. Now that Spark takes that place, it's just a better Blaze. Now Blaze does do a little bit of damage, but it's not really worth it. Temp is better, Poison's better, so don't go for Blaze, go for Spark now. Spark is 110% meta, so Blood Moon Twins, Spark, Glacier, Tempest, and that's about it really. And even Poison too. Poison does work because this is a multi-tick, high damage sword. Scarlet Slicer does do 4 hits, I believe, or 5 hits, and it's a pretty decent chance of proccing Poison. Next sword is Draken Fangs. Draken Fangs is 110% a meta PvP sword. Now, I do kind of regret putting Poison on it because, as you guys, if you guys watch my video on Draken Fangs, Draconic Fury does like 100 hits. So essentially, it does 100 hits, and then it does its final slashes at the end. But the first hits it does are like really low damage ticks. So the Poison ticks are 7 damage on Draken Fangs. So it's actually it's not good, honestly. I'll be honest. Poison Stone kind of sucks on Draken Fangs. Tempest is way, way, way better. Put Tempest on this stone if you want, or on this sword if you want damage. And Bloodthirsty is decent. It will proc a ton off of the second ability. Tempest is definitely your best bet though. Spark, another really, really good universal PvP stone. Spark and Tempest are probably your best bet. But you could throw Bloodthirsty on, maybe. It might go crazy. I haven't really tested it with this sword, but I don't really want to take out Poison because it is kind of expensive and it does look sick. So Saber V2 is another sword that is a really, really, really good PvP sword right now. Tempest goes crazy on Saber. I'll be honest. Tempest is absolutely amazing on this sword. Spark, absolutely amazing. Spark is number 1, 100% on every PvP sword. Tempest, Blood is mid. A lot of people think that Blood is actually good in PvP. I don't really see it. It doesn't heal enough. You're not really proccing a lot. You only usually do 1 combo and then they're dead, so you don't really get a lot of health back, or you usually just do 1 or 2 combos. So Blood, I'd stay away from Blood. Tempest, Spark, Glacier are usually your best bet, and that's what it's going to be on this sword. Do not use Poison on Saber. You'll essentially proc Poison off the first ability, and then it will just be garbage, and you'll take no damage with Poison, so just use Spark. ATK is 110% the best with Spark. I do have Glacier because this was my second stone ever, and I put it on ATK. Now, Glacier, back in the day, I think was the best in my opinion, but Glacier is still really, really good. Now, Tempest is really good on this sword. Glacier is really good. Spark is really good. I would not recommend Poison because this is a multi-hit sword that does like 50 hits. So whatever you do not put Poison on this sword, or you'll be selling. Although, if you do like the aesthetic of Poison, then go ahead and do it for that. But I'm just saying, Spark is better, Tempest better. Because remember, Tempest, you could proc it infinite amount of times. You can proc it back to back to back to back. But Poison, you can only proc it, once every 10 seconds. So that's why you need to choose very carefully what sword you put Poison on. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Please like and subscribe for more. Also, if you guys have any more questions on what stones you should be using, go ahead and ask. If there's a certain sword that you really, really enjoy and you're like, I don't know if I should put poison on it, you can go and ask the question. I can hook you guys up. But I basically told you everything you need to know about poison and any of those other new stones. But just don't be afraid to ask, essentially, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.